Hello, and welcome back to the Sword of Mercury. Today, we're going to be talking about the sun and solar energy, the aspect that resonates with the masculine force. As we've talked about lunar goddess energy in a previous video, now we're going to be talking about solar god energy. Solar god energy, solar god energy. And obviously, these are some of the main concepts associated with that here on the board. So let's get started. When we think about the sun, typically it is the thing that brings life upon all things, the source of creation. Source of creation, source of creation, source of creation. The reason why this is so important is because it lets all things grow. It lets them evolve and adapt and change. It's actually known in science that the sun helps express over 900 genes in the body or something like that. So even just being in sunlight can help you change on a genome level. So sunlight is important. But in terms of what that energy actually means for us as an individual, it represents a certain aspect of our being. The direct side, the side that is based off logic and directness rather than intuition or perception that is indirect. Now we're talking about here direct. So light is something that is typically it's a direct form of energy compared to some of the other forces out there in the cosmos. And we talk about the force of like God, typically he's always associated as like this force of creation that is like all things stem from, right? Typically associated with like this ability to create from nothing, but essentially it's not nothing, it's creating from light, which is the construct of all things in the material realm. And that's an important concept to be aware of when we talk about solar god energy. So we're not just talking about ascending to a higher state of energy beyond that which might have been previously attainable. We're talking about almost like a new life force. Typically the moon is associated with darkness and death and rebirth and transformation, but the sun is connected with life, vitality, and everlong. Just thinking of the Foo Fighters song right now, Everlong Now. But essentially something that is everlasting. It's beyond the constraint of a cycle, because it is the center of the cycle. It's the center of all things. So that is kind of the difference between when we talk about the sun and the moon. Sun is something that is the focal point for all things. The moon is something that operates off that energy, and it helps facilitate that transformation. So as I was saying, solar god energy is something that is direct and everlasting, but it's also something that is, in a sense, permanent, not in the sense where the sun itself will never die, but the force that is the sun is associated with spiritually is a force that is essentially permanent. You can almost think of it as the force of God or the force of the angels, right? Angels are something that are able to exist beyond space and time, able to exist in higher dimensions, and they're beings which are able to see creation from the very beginning to the end. We're talking about the same type of force here, talking about a very angelic force, a divine force, a force that is beyond constraints of space and time. So, unlike the lunar force, which is more temporary in a sense, where it needs renewal, but not just that it needs renewal, but it's a fundamental concept for its process of change, is something to be recognized. And I think also too, when we incorporate these as a human being, you can almost think of it as if somebody is going through a deep process of change or through a cycle of rebirth, they might connect more with the energy of the moon at that time, because their personality is in a state of flux and their characters in a state of flux, and they're seeking to create change. But if one has decided who it is that they want to be as an individual, and they want to connect to that energy and tether that energy and anchor it, or ensure that it's undisturbed and able to be in this permanent state, and they might connect to the energy of the sun more, because that is the everlasting force. So again, both of these are needed for that state of harmony within, but they serve different purposes. So the sun, also known as Sol, is the counterpart to the Latin of Luna, is this force, and when you embody that force, whether you're masculine, feminine, or like boy or girl, whatever, and again, I said this in the last video too, you don't necessarily have to connect to your innate, energy that would be represented as, like, masculine or feminine. Like, for example, like, if you're a boy, you can connect to the energy of the moon if you feel drawn to it. If you're a girl, you feel drawn to the energy of the sun, then connect to it. But generally, the forces in themselves represent certain aspects, such as the moon being represented as the feminine force, and the sun represented as a masculine force. But again, work what you feel drawn to work with, or connect what you feel you want to connect with or feel drawn to. So again, when we talk about the sun, also sometimes it's connected to the concept of fire. It is somewhat of a state of beyond fire, but if you want to connect it to that state, it is possible. It is connected to the state of fire, but it's almost a more purified, more divine state of fire, because it is more than just fire in the state that it's in. But it is connected to the concept of fire nonetheless, and which is interesting because, again, we see the contrast with that, where the moon is connected to water, right, and cooling, but here the sun is connected to fire and heat. So, and just contemplating the balance of these two things and why it's so central as a concept that they occur within balance, due to you needing a balance of these aspects, such as it can't be daylight all the time and it can't be moonlight all the time, is important. But again, the sun connected to all these aspects, not just that, but when we talk about God energy, the concept of ascending to a state of God key or divinity, tappy marker. Talk about ascending to a state of God key or chi, but we're gonna refer to it as ki in this sense, but the same concept, or prana if you want to say God energy. When we talk about God ki, we're talking about reaching a state in which one has now ascended past the limitations of a mortal being. They're reaching into the state of the divine. They're able to connect with the force of the angels, essentially, at some level, or a state akin to that, a state akin to the angels, or beings of the divine. And in doing so, one can reach new states in different areas of their life. They're not bound by the laws of materialism so much. They're able to ascend past them to a limit, a degree. And in doing so, they're able to unlock new abilities, such as the ability to regenerate, or to connect to the present moment, connect to the pure timeline, and in fact create the reality that they want. A lot of times, the moon realm is also linked to divergent timelines or divergent forms of energy or realms. The sun is connected to the pure energy of time, so that's another thing. But again, you're really dealing with one force that operates directly and one force that operates indirectly. So that is the basis of these two energies. And I hope you enjoyed, because that is pretty much all I have for you today on the concept of solar god energy. But essentially, when you ascend to that energy, you are tapping into a new energy of the divine, state of divine ki, which has not previously been accessed. And when you tap into it, its full potential, you're able to overcome more limits than you ever thought possible. So, I hope you enjoy. This has been the Sword of Mercury. Remember to like, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Again, brought to you by the Prince of Mercury. And I'll see you next time.